If you're moving to Florida or the Tampa Bay area, this video is for you. I'm going to talk about some of the things you got to watch out for when you're moving to the area. Stick around. My name's Sam. Welcome to the Living in Tampa, Florida channel, where every single week we make videos about what it's like to live, work, and play in the Tampa Bay area. If that's something you're interested in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell next to it so you're notified every time one of our new videos comes out. Also, I am a licensed realtor in the state of Florida, so if you have any real estate specific questions, please don't hesitate to call, text, email. My number is right there on the screen. I'd love to hear from you. Let's get into this video. Maybe you've always wanted to live in Florida, or maybe you just came to that conclusion. Either way, you've seen Florida on the news. Usually like this, the Florida Man. Florida Man is the common heading for news stories about a Florida man doing something crazy. We all know crazy stuff like this happens in every state in the US. I grew up in Oklahoma, and it all seems like pretty normal things that happen. Well, normal is a difficult word to use, but usually these Florida man stories are not that surprising to me because I know people from growing up who might find themselves in this situation. Maybe you became familiar with the Tampa area from Tiger King. Remember summer 2020? This show was really popular. These people were in the Tampa area and in Oklahoma. When I heard that, I mostly thought, yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. All of Oklahoma and all of Florida and the Tampa area are not filled with people like that. The stories of the Florida Man or the Tiger King documentary is not what Tampa is actually like. It's not what Oklahoma is actually like. Let's talk about Tampa. All right, if you're thinking about moving here, you're probably thinking about hurricanes. You're thinking about flood zones. You're thinking about this kind of stuff. Flood zones are important, but when you're shopping for a house, get to know the types of flood zones. Even if you're in flood zone AE, which does require flood insurance, your house might be built in a way that doesn't require you to have flood insurance. So if you really fall in love with a house in a flood zone, just reach out to an insurance agent and find out what that insurance is going to be. Or even ask your lender, hey, based on this address, will you require me to have flood insurance? And you can get some of those details. Or even just ask your agent or me, hey, what about this address? Do you think I'll have to have flood insurance? And what would it cost? And that's a few simple phone calls, and you've got some pretty good data to work with. But flood zones are there for a reason. It's more likely to flood in a flood zone. And that's based on years and years and years of data. I currently live in a flood zone in a house that's very low. The elevation of our living room is 5 feet above sea level. When we started the process to buy this house, I went over to the neighbor, knocked on the door, and asked, how do the storms affect you right here? He told me in the 35 years they've lived there, they've been flooded a few times. They've had some insurance claims. But he also told me that the person that previously used to live in my house would put sandbags in these certain areas to help the water from coming up. That's my plan for now. Because my house is older and lower, I do have pretty expensive flood insurance. But some of my neighbors that have newer homes, their homes are built up higher, where the garage is on the ground floor, there's no power low enough to be flooded. Even if they do have to have flood insurance, it's not near as much as mine is. So even in a flood zone, you have variances. I have some clients in California that have been buying investment property in Florida, and one of the first things they said to me was, we do not want a house in a flood zone. Eventually, we found some houses in flood zones that they really liked, and they were deterred at first until we actually looked at what the flood insurance would cost and how it would affect their investment. And they quickly changed their tune because even though it would cost them, the rent in the area was higher because people want to live closer to the water. So flood zones, flood insurance, it is something you gotta watch out for, but it's not always a deal breaker. Sometimes it might be. I don't want to say it never is, but it's not always a deal breaker. Another thing you gotta watch out for is property taxes. If you've ever owned a house, you know what property taxes are like. You pay it as part of your monthly payment to the bank. They collect all that money, and then annually they pay your property tax bill for you. That happens the same way here, no difference. But property taxes do vary here a lot based on county, city, even developments. We have another taxing system called CDDs, Community Development Districts. So think of this as a big planned area. Maybe it's a really nice neighborhood that's really close to like outdoor shopping. Whenever the developer partners with the city to build an area like this, they raise money through future property taxes to build all this infrastructure. So homes in this area have to pay for being part of that community development district. This usually lasts about 10 years, and I've seen this range from $700 a year up to $3,500 a year, really just depending on the area and depending on the amenities. But these areas are nice. And it's not, if you're planning on living in the house for 30 years, then it's not like you're going to be paying that for that whole time. Most of you plan on living in a house for 5 years. I mean, that's the average is people move every 5 years. So if you're only planning on being there for a short time, the CDD might be a little more influential, and that is something you should watch out for. Another thing you should watch out for is HOAs, homeowners associations. Because there is a lot of retirement communities in Florida, a lot of these have very inclusive HOAs. So let's say you just retired, you've got a bunch of equity in your house in Pennsylvania, you're going to sell it, and you want to buy a condo down here. Maybe the condo is only $120,000, but your HOA could be $500 a month. And a $500 a month HOA might include a lot of things. That's usually going to include all kinds of amenities around the facility, all kinds of maintenance around the facility, also your water, your sewage, your trash, sometimes even internet and cable. So even though this might seem like a lot of money, a lot of that is money you would be spending otherwise. So then, you buy your condo, you have your HOA payment, you have your insurance payment, and then maybe you just have an electric bill, and then your groceries. So for a retiree who has some cash to purchase the property, it could be a really nice setup. Another thing you've got to watch out for is traffic. Florida has been growing like crazy. The current growth rate is 1,000 people every day, net growth in Florida. So even when you take into account people that are moving away and people that are passing away, it's still growing 1,000 people every day in the state overall. Tampa is a big benefactor of that growth. The infrastructure has not caught up. There are not easy ways to get across town. There are not interstate loops or toll loops that can kind of drop you off in different areas. For example, I live about 20 miles from downtown, but it usually takes me about 50 minutes to get there. Maybe you're used to this kind of slow moving traffic, but it was kind of a shock to me when I moved here, so that's why I wanted to tell you to be ready for it. Okay, let's finish with something that you might be worried about, but you really don't need to be. Alligators. When you see pictures like this alligator walking across the golf course, or you see videos like this guy pulling his dog out of the alligator's mouth, it's easy to imagine, wow, these dinosaur lizards are crawling all over the state. But they're really not. There's a lot of them. You can go to parks, to lakes, you can see them pretty easily. But they are really scared of people. They don't instinctually think they can just attack a person and eat them. The locals often say that they're only approaching people if they're used to being fed. So the locals are always discouraging everyone from feeding alligators anything because they don't need our food. They're fine on their own. So as long as nobody's feeding them, they're not coming up to you. They're not coming close. My in-laws live right on a little neighborhood lake, and there's consistently an alligator out there. It's maybe 6 feet long. We even noticed a little baby on its back the other day. And sometimes it even comes up in the neighbor's yard. I've walked pretty close to it with my toddler, and once we're within 20 feet of it, there's my toddler right there. Once we're within 20 feet of it, it jumps back in the water and swims away so fast. It doesn't even want us to come close. I hope this is helpful. These are just some of the things if you're moving to Florida and if you're specifically moving to the Tampa area, you should watch out for. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that little bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Again, my name's Sam. Here's my number and my email. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I would love to hear from you. I love to connect with people that are moving here or thinking about moving here, and even just help people to get to know the area, help people to get to understand the different cities and the different areas. So I would love to talk to you. Thanks for coming by.